Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Congregation Ner Tamid of San Francisco. It's my pleasure to welcome you, and services this morning will be conducted by Rabbi Emeritus Moshe Levin, Cantor Rudy, and the Torah will be read by Michelle Hasid. So it's my pleasure to turn the service over to Cantor Rudy for the morning blessings.
Thank you, Charlotte. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We begin our service on page 105 with Shochenad. Shochenad, marom v'kadosh shemo, v'chatur aninu tariki baronai l'sharim navatehila, befi esharim tithalal, divrei tarikim titbarach. ובלשון חסידים תתרום, המוכרת כראשים תקדש, ובמקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. שכן קבל כל העיטורים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, להודות להלל לשבח, לפאר לרומם לידך, לברך ולהוקדש. על הכל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. ברכות והודעות מעתה והיא עד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלכנו בתשבחות, אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך מלכי העולמים. יתגדל ויקדש מרבה, בעלמדי ורקידותי ומפחותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמרבה מברך אדומיה, יברך וישבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה, בריחו לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו amen. We rise and embody your spirit as we turn to page 107 for the Baruch. Baruch et Adonai hamevorach, Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam yotzer or v'rech asher oseh shalom u'voreh hakol. Hakol yerecha v'chasha bechucha. You may be seated. כדרכך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, וזרח המקיים הבא, חפץ בלתי כדו עלינו לימוד המשיח, ואין דומה לך מושיענו לחיית המתים. We're on page 108. Elanda nakar hamasim baruch umborach befikol neshama galo vetuvo mahalei olam da'atu tvuna sovevimoto hamikahel hakayot hakodesh v'nedgar v'chavod al hamerkava zechuru mishol lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chevodo טובים מיד שבנה אלוהינו יתרם בדעת בבינה ובשכל כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל מלאים זיף ומפיקים נוגה נהזיבם בכל העולם שמחים בצאתם בששים בבואם עושים בהם רצון כולם וכבוד נותנים לשמו טהרה ונינה לזכם אחותו, קרא לשמש ויזרח קרא, והקים צורת הלבנה, שבט נותנים לו, כל צבא אדום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים, וחיות הקודש, לאל אשר שבה מהמעשים. יברך מושנו אשר המעשה ידיך ואומר שעשית יפארו חסדיו. תברך צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו. We're on page 110. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים בהם אהוב יראה, רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה, ובתורה בשירה זמרה. ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא קדוש הוא. וכולם מקבלים עליהם על מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת הרוח בשפה ורגל שם כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים בינה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך הארץ כבודו. והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מתנשאים יום הצרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו לאל ברוך ממות יוצאנו. המקדש בטובו בכל יום תמיד מעשה בראשית כאמור לעושה עודים גדולים כי אליהם חסדו אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה להודו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצא מאורו. We're on page 111. Avada b'haftanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemala gedola vitera Chamalta aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Ba'avod Avoteinu Shebatchu B'cha Avinu Malkeinu V'telamden Chukechayim Ken techonenu l'tamdenu Avinu Ha'avarachaman Hamrachem Rachem Aleinu V'ten b'libeinu lehavinu askir lishmoa lilamod lelamed lishmod v'lasot ולקיים מכל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה והאר עינינו בתורתך ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך ויחל לבבנו ליראה וליראה את שמך ולא נבוש לעולם ועד ולא נאוש לעולם ועד כי בשם כל השכה הגדול והנורא בעתנו נגילה ונשמחה בשובתך. As we gather our tzitzit, we turn to the bottom third of page 111. והביאנו לשלום מרבה כנפות הארץ ותוליכנו כאן במיולי ארצנו כי אל פועל ישועות אתה הובנו וכאן גם בלשון וקראתנו לסלע באמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר במו ישראל באהבה. We turn to page 112 for the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפו בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. As we turn to page 113, we join together for the Vayomer. Vayomer Adonai Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'amata alehem v'asu lahem tzitzit hakanfei bigdehem לדורותם ונתנו הציצית הכנף בטיל תכרת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם בכל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תצורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. מביא יציב ונקם וקיים, וישב להם על והלו וחבין הדעת והלבן הזה, עלינו לעולם תחת, וזו לכון ומה כתוב על האמת. על עבדינו ועלינו על עבדינו ועל דורותינו ועל כל תורת זרע ישראל בנך. מלכנו מלך אבותינו ולאבותינו, אלוהים זולתך. Five lines down from the top of page 114. Emer, emer, emet atahu rishon, emer, emer, emet atahu acharon, umibaladecha ein lanu melech kohen u'moshiach, umibaladecha ein lanu melech kohen u'moshiach. תהילה לעליון ברוך הוא משה ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נהדר בקודש Nora tehillat asefere, Nora tehillat asefere. שירת שתיבו גאולים, לשמחה שפתיים, יחד כולם, הודו והמלכו ויאמרו. אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד. To Israel, Uma Bezrat Yisrael, Uvechenu Mecha, Yehuda veYisrael. Go Aleinu, Adonai Tzevaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Yah Yisrael. At this time, we turn to page 115b for the Shacharit Amida. We rise if we can. We'll begin together on page 115b through 116, after which we continue silently through on page 117. 115b. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibur v'Hanora Elohei Elyon Gomer Chasarim Tovim v'Koneh Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot ומביא גואלים מבניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ופוקר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקר שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחי מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מחכה חיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופך עולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדם מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. יקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב ביד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא הארץ כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנסים ליומת שרפים, ליומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך, מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד, על ידי דוד, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך, ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה, לדור ודור נגיד גדולך. ולנצח נצחים קדושך נגיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Sim, sim, shalom, sim, shalom, sim, sim, shalom, tova חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך, ברכנו אבינו כולנו כאחד ויוד פניך. שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם, שים שלום טובה וברכה, כי בעוד פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו תורת חיים באהבת חסד וצדקה וברכה ורחמים בחיים בשלום. שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם, שים שלום טובה וברכה, וטוב בעיניך לברך עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם, שים שלום טובה וברכה, ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. We turn to page 138 for Kaddish Shalom. יקרא ויקרא שמי רבה, בירמני ורקידותי וימיך מחותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב וימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם עולם מעלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל על שמי לקודשה, בריחו לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה המירנה בעלמא וימרו, אמן. תתקבל ותנדך אצלה קודם אבהות יפארו, אמן. יהי שלום עליהם יאמרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו, amen. As we turn to page 139, we begin our Torah service with Ein Kamocha, after which we will continue with our Torah service, or with our Torah reading. So we're on page 139. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, ve'en k'ma'asecha Malachutecha malchut kol ha'amim, u'memshaltecha b'kol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech el amo v'shalom. Avarachamim, heitiv aviratzonecha et Zion. Tivnei chamot Yerushalayim, Tivecha levadat takanu, Mechel benisa, Adon Olamim. At this time, I'd like to invite my wife over. She will be reading the Torah for us today. As we normally do, we will do a communal bracha, and then after Aliyah number 7, we will close the bracha as I invite Rabbi Levin for the maftir. So if you have your Sim Shalom, we are on page 142, and I would invite everyone to unmute so that you can recite the bracha, and it'll sound like it'll sound, and that's fine. So page 142, we begin together. Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvodah. Baruch Adonai Havarach Elam Vahed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. So in the Eit Chaim, we are on page 335, verse 18.
Rudy?
Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah. Let's take a moment just to introduce the Torah portion,
Okay.
especially because we're beginning a new book of the Torah. So I'm going to take my scroll that I have in my home, and so we could, that bracha will be very, shall we say, real, and we'll start the second book of the Torah. The book of Shemot is known in English and Greek, Latin as Exodus, because it tells the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt. In Hebrew, it's called Shemot because books are not named on their theme. Books are named on the opening major word. And Shemot means names. It starts off by saying these are the names of the descendants of Jacob who went with Jacob to Egypt when Joseph revealed himself as the viceroy. And the Torah portion for Shemot in the book opens up by saying the first thing that the Pharaoh of Egypt forgot Joseph. He doesn't remember what Joseph did in saving the land from the tremendous famine. And instead what he does is he enslaves these descendants of Jacob, these children of the brothers of Joseph and the 12 tribes. And he enslaves them out of a fear that they'll become a fifth column and join the enemies of Egypt. In the ancient world, Egypt was a major dynasty, but it was in competition with the dynasty from the north, the Assyrians, and the dynasty from the Far East, the Babylonians, and in the south, Ethiopian and a good portion of Africa. So the idea that Egypt always felt surrounded by enemies is something that you might consider to be somewhat logical. However, during that enslavement, the story of Shemot that was read in the previous 2 years tells us of how far the edict was of the Pharaoh to actually tried to stifle the growth of the Hebrews, so much so that he had all of the male boys, all of the male children thrown into the river. One was saved by the name of Moses, a name given to him by the Pharaoh's daughter, because she is the one who drew him from the river. And actually, Moshe is actually an Egyptian name, but it became one of the most common names of all of the Jewish people. I'm one of the many, many, many who are blessed with that name. And Moshe grows up in the Pharaoh's palace as a son to the Pharaoh's daughter. But he ultimately remembers his kindred. And in one event, trying to save an Israelite slave from being beaten, he actually kills the Egyptian taskmaster. When the word is known, he flees to Midian. There he marries Tzipporah, the daughter of a Midianite priest whose name is Yitro, and he's now a shepherd. He's retired from being a prince of Egypt. But things don't stay that way for long. One day while he is gathering his sheep, a bush that is burning but not consumed confronts him. And out of that bush comes the voice of God saying, Moshe, Moshe, Hineni, here I am. Go to Egypt and tell the Pharaoh, Shalach et ami v'yavduni, let my people go so that they may serve me, not you. And that's exactly where Michelle is going to start the reading, where Moses is confronted with this challenge to go back to Egypt. And what is the first thing that he does? Listen and see if you can come up with that as an answer to the question. What does Moses do when this voice of God tells him, leave Midian, go to Egypt, and tell the Pharaoh to let my people go? Michelle?
Thank you, Rabbi. We're on page 335, verse 18.
Amen. Vayelech Moshe vayashav el yeter hodno vayomer lo Elchana vayashuva el chai asher b'Mitzrayim va'ereh hodam chayim vayomer Yitro leMoshe lech l'shalom. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe b'Midyan lech shuv Mitzrayim ki metu kol ha'anashim hamvakshim el nafshecha. Vayikach Moshe et ishto v'et banav ve'arkivem al hachamor ve'yashav artza Mitzrayim. Vayikach Moshe et mateh ha'Elohim beyado.
Aliyah 2 can be found verse 21.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe v'lech techa l'shuv Mitzrayma re'eh kol hamuftim asher samti v'yadecha v'asitam lifnei Pharaoh v'ani hachazek et libo v'lo yishalach et ha'am. V'amarta el Paro ko amar Adonai b'ni v'chori Yisrael. Vayomer alecha shalach et b'ni v'avdeni bat ma'en l'shalcho hinei anochi choreg et bincha v'chorecha. Vayhi v'derech b'malon, vayivkeshehu Adonai, vayvakesh hamito. Vatikach tzipora tzor, vatichrot et arlat b'na, v'taga l'raglav, vatomer ki chatan damim atali. Va'iref bimenu azamra hatandami lamulot.
Before we go on with the next aliyah, any answer to the question, what was the first thing that Moses did when he hears this voice, go to Egypt? Any ideas? What would you do?
Go to Egypt.
It's an important lesson here.
Say why.
He asks permission of his father-in-law. He says to his father-in-law, please excuse me, I want to go to Egypt and see how my brothers are doing. I want to see how my people are doing. In other words, Moses asked permission to go home. So I want to ask you, can you ever go home? And as a matter of fact, he does go home, so to speak, with his wife, Tzipporah, and his children. That's what Michelle just read this moment. He goes back with his wife and children. Can you think of going back to your old neighborhood, of seeing your old friends and your old family, but not when you were a child, but all grown up with everything that you have developed, appreciated, added in your life? Imagine going home with who you are now. Give it some thought, and we'll take some answers after the next aliyah. Michelle?
Thank you, Rabbi. We're on page 337, verse 27.
Vayomer Adonai el Aharon lech likrat Moshe hamidbara vayelech v'yifkeshu b'har ha'Elohim vayishaklo vayaged Moshe li'Aharon et kol divrei Adonai asher shalacho ve'et kol ha'torah asher tzivahu. Vayelech Moshe v'Aharon vayasfo et kol ziknei b'nei Yisrael. Vayedaber Aharon et kol hadvarim asher diber Adonai al Moshe vayas ha'otot le'nei ha'am. Vayamen ha'am vayishmu ki bakar Adonai et b'nei Yisrael v'chi ra'a et anyam vayikdu vayishtachavu.
Oh, let's see. What would it be like for you to go home with what it is that you have acquired over the years? If you got married, if you have children, and you go back home and say, look at me now. Would you surprise people? What would it be like for you? I don't know who can unmic anybody, but if you can unmute yourself, please do and give us a little answer.
What if you are home?
What if you are home?
What if you never left home?
That's right. So, what if this is your home? What if you were to see people whom you grew up with and they did not continue to live here? They moved elsewhere. Do you think that they would have a life more enhanced than you because they had different experiences? Or do you think that you were better off because you stayed where you were planted? Well, these are interesting thoughts. Let's go on with the next aliyah, which is a different kind of a challenge. In this aliyah, Moses does confront Pharaoh with his brother Aaron, and he says, let my people go in God's name, but he doesn't tell the whole truth. He doesn't ask the full question or the full demand of being freed from slavery. Let's see what happens in chapter 5.
Page 338, chapter 5.
V'achar ba'u Moshe v'acharon v'yomru el Paro. Ko amar Adonai Elohei Israel, Shalach et ami v'yochogu li b'midbar. V'yomer Paro mi Adonai asher eshma b'kolo l'shalach et Yisrael. Lo yadati et Adonai v'gam et Yisrael lo ashalecha. Vayomru Elohei ha'ivrim nikra lenu Nelchana derech shleshet yamim bamidbar. V'nizbecha Adonai Eloheinu pen yifkaenu b'dever o b'charev. Vayomer Aleichem Melech Mitzrayim Lama Moshe v'Acharon Tafriu et ha'am Asav Lechu l'sifloteichem. Vayomer Paro Chen Rabbi Matam Aretz V'hishbatem Otam L'siflotam.
We're going to stop here for 1 second. Aliyah number 4 for our Misha Berach. We recite the Misha Berachs here. So Charlotte, would you do you have that the list by chance?
Yehuda Hirsch ben Shendel, Michael Shmuel ben Yehuda Hirsch Yafa Leah, Chazanit Leah Chana bat Rachel, Shira and Yehudi, Sarah Leah bat Ayala, Ushmuel Shabtai, Moshe ben Tevia, Hanan bat Teresa, Nachama Rivka bat Para Ega, Susie Appleton, Sally Lagerquist, Arlene Lieberman, Helen Brinker, Danielle Ben Hana, Jonathan Ben Bera, Michael Bates, Jeff Seamus, Marvin Pfeffer, Pam Kane, Rabbi Steve Robbins, Rabbi Cheryl Peretz, and Cantor Rachel Goldman.
And of course, please feel free to add the names into the chat. And also, Rabbi Levin, do you have any additional people you'd like to add to the list?
I do. Barbara's a cousin, Jerry, who is in a very challenging and difficult state with cancer.
We will recite Debbie Friedman's Misha Berach. Misha Berach avoteinu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, that renew our body, that renew our spirit, and let us say Amen. We continue Aliyah number 5 on page 339, verse 6.
Vaytzav Paro bayom hahu et hanoksim ba'am v'et shotrav lemor Lo tosifun la teven lam lilbon halvenim kitmol shilshom hem yelchu bekoshishu lahem teven yet matkonet halvinim asher hem osim timo shilshom Tasimu alehem lo tigru mimenu kirnir pim hem alken hem soakim lemor nelchan isbechal Eloheinu tichbar havodah al hanashim v'yasuva v'al yisu divrei shaker.
Before we go on with the next Aliyah, what Michelle has just read has a lot of relevancy for today and what's going on in the world today. When Pharaoh hears that Moses and Aaron are demanding the freedom of the Israelites, his response is not merely, no, 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 I will not let them go. His response is worse. He says, I'm going to make their tasks as slaves even harder. And you will find not only they won't be glad that you came, but they'll start blaming you. And so the Pharaoh's response is, taskmasters, tell these Israelite slaves that from now on, not only do they have to make bricks, but they have to find the straw to make the bricks, and the amount of bricks they have to make every day remains the same. And sure enough, the people start complaining to Moses and Aaron, what have you done to us? And it doesn't stop there. Moses complains to God. What did you do? You told me I should come over here to liberate the people, and you've made it worse. Where is that happening today?
Rabbi, you're muted.
Invited.
You're
I
muted,
didn't
Rabbi.
realize the whole time I was muted.
No, just for the past 5-6 seconds.
Okay. What disturbs me the most, and I'd like to, let's really make it interactive, is what China is doing where? Where is China oppressing the people even more so that they will stop complaining? Where is it trying to stifle this the sense of freedom?
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. I don't know who was who said that, but whoever said it's correct. The latest thing is the threat to the destruction of the monument of Tiananmen Square. But they've frightened all of the activists to try to leave, and they grab them and imprison them. The same thing is happening with the Uyghurs. Those who complain, our parents have been taken away. It's, if you don't keep quiet, your parents will never come back. This idea of tyrants, getting the people who are deserving of liberation to blame their attempted liberators, seems to be a pattern that we find with too many countries in the world today. We have to fight against that. We have to stand up for those people whose voices can't be heard. Let's go to the next Aliyah. Rudy, where are we?
We're on page 339, verse 10, Aliyah number 6.
Vayetzu nosei ha'am v'shodra v'yamru el ha'am lemor ko amar paro eineni noten lachem teven atem lechu kechu lachem teven me'asher timtzau Ki eini graha me'avodatchem davar. V'yafet ha'am b'chol eretz Mitzrayim v'koshesh kash la teven. the Hanoksim Matsim Lemor Kalu Masechem Dvar Yom Biomo Kasher Biot HaTeven Vayuku Shotrei B'nei Yisrael Asher Samu Alehem Noksei Faro Lemor Madu Alo Klitem Hachem Lilbon Kidmol Shilshon Gam Timo Gam Hayom.
We're coming close. We're coming close to the end of the parsha, and things are not getting any better for the Israelites. It's only the last verse that we see a promise of redemption. The Torah reading.
Okay. We continue on page 340, verse 15, Aliyah number 7.
Vayavo shotrei b'nei Yisrael vayitzaku el paro lemor lama taseh chol levadecha teven ein nitan levadecha uvenim omrim lanu asu v'hinei avadecha mukim v'chatata mecha vayomer nirpim atem nirpim al ken atem omrim melcha nisbechal Adonai yata lechu ivdu v'teven lo yinaten lachem v'tochen levenim titenu Vayiru shotrei b'nei Yisrael atam be'ra lemor lo tigru melivnechem dvar yom b'yomo vayifku et Moshe v'et Aharon nitzavim likratam b'tzeitam et Pharaoh vayamru aleihem Yereh Adonai Aleichem Vayishpot Asher Hishav Temre Et Recheinu V'nei Pharaoh V'nei Avadav Latet Cherev V'yadam Lehargeinu V'yashav Moshe El Adonai Vayomar Adonai Lama Hareo taha la'am hazeh lamazeh shalach ume'ahav bati et paro l'daber bishmecha hera la'am hazeh v'hatzel lo hitzalta et amecha Vayomer Adonai el Moshe ata tireh asher esel Pharaoh ki vayad hazakah yishalchem uyad hazakah yarshem eritzo.
So would everybody unmute and we will recite the second bracha. Page 142. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tzidkenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
We turn to page 146 for Chatzi Kaddish before I call up the Maftir Aliyah.
I come to the picture that they can see. Oh, that was a good piece.
You can please remute yourselves. Thank you. יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה,
Amen.
בעלמא דפרה קירתי וימליך מלכותי, בחייך נביומך ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולם מעל מיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה בריחו לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דהמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יעמוד הרב משה נתן בן אסתר ושלמה הלוי למפטיר.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אתה אדוני מלך העולם שברך בנו עם כל העמים ונתן לנו התורה. נותן התורה.
The maftir can be found on page 340, verse 22.
Amen. Vayashav Moshe el Adonai Mar Adonai Lama Hareotah Le'am Hazeh Lama Zeh Shalaftani Umeaz Bati el Paro L'Aber Bishmecha Heralam Hazeh V'Hatzel Lo Hitzalta Et Amecha Vayomer Adonai el Moshe ata tireh asher said Pharaoh ki v'yad hazakah yishalchem uvyad hazakah yigarshem me'aritzo.
ברוך אדוני מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי לא בתם זכינו ברכת אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. It is my pleasure to invite Rabbi Levin to recite our Haftorah today, after which he will follow through with his drash. Rabbi Levin, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Rudy, and Michelle, and Charlotte, and all of the Ner Tamidniks that are on the screen. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be here. It's virtual. It's almost reality. It's almost as if we could reach and touch each other. And to hear Rudy's voice and to see Michelle again chanting the Torah portion, and to see faces of people that I use to daven with every Shabbat, it's an absolute pleasure. The Haftarah today actually gives us two choices. It could be from the book of Isaiah or the book of Yirmiyahu, because the Ashkenazim do Isaiah, Yeshayahu, and the Sephardim do Jeremiah. I'm going to take just a little bit of the Ashkenazi selection, that is of Yeshayahu. It's conflicted. Is Yeshayahu, as the book of Yeshayahu is made up of different prophets, it's hope and it's also a threat of destruction. But the poetry here is really surprising. It sounds like it would come from a 12-step program in AA, in Alcoholics Anonymous. So here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher barach banu mikol ha'tevim v'ravatzah b'devrei menarim b'mechad. In days to come, Yaakov shall strike root, Israel shall spread wealth, and the face of the world shall be convened with fruit. For was he beaten as beater has been, that he suffered the slaughter of his slayers, assailing them with fury unchained. His pitiless blast bore them off on a day of gale. Now listen to this. The proud crowns of the drunkards of Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is but wilted flowers on the heads of people bloated with rich fruit, who are overcome with wine. Oh, Adonai, something strong and mighty like a storm of hail, a shower of pestilence, a storm of massive torrential rain. Let it be hurled with force to the ground, trampled underfoot the proud crowns of the drunkards of Ephraim, the wilted flowers, the heads of men bloated with rich food, that are as glorious beauty, that shall be like an early fig before the fruit harvest. Whoever sees it devours it, and when it is still in his hands. But these are also muddled by wine and dazed by liquor. Priests and prophets are muddled by liquor. They're confused by wine. They're dazed by liquor. They're muddled in their visions. They stumble in judgments. Yea, old tables are covered with, I didn't want to mention, filth, so that there's no space left. To whom would he give instruction? To whom expound the message? Those newly weaned from milk, lust taken away from the breast? The same mutter and mutter, mutter and mutter, mutter and mutter, now here, now there. However, no more shall Jacob be shamed, no longer his face grow pale. Men will hallow the Holy One of Yaakov and stand in awe of the God of Israel. Woo!
Rabbi, you're muted.
Imagine if we actually had the opportunity to meet a prophet. I did. I met two. One of them was Rabbi Louis Finkelstein, who was the chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary when I first started rabbinical school in the 1960s. He was a prophetic figure. But the one whom everybody agreed was a prophet was Abraham Joshua Heschel. And I'm going to use his yahrzeit today to deal with a question about what does a Jew do when the Shabbat also is the day of Christmas. You know, in the past, we wouldn't mention the word Christmas in the synagogue. Never. In fact, I grew up in a world where people spat in front of a church. Christians were the enemy. Jesus was a name never to be mentioned. And yet, things have changed. Do you know that years and centuries ago, it was forbidden to study Torah on Christmas? A Jew was not allowed to have any pleasure on Christmas Day. And specifically, the study of Torah was considered the greatest of all days, of all joys. So studying Torah was prohibited on Christmas. However, things changed. We even know from the late Middle Ages, Jews in Central Europe had Christmas trees. They made special dinners, and they were committed Jews. We know that development here in the United States became a Hanukkah bush, and we began to see Christmas as a way of assimilation. And a surprising thing is that Israel now is facing that challenge. Do you know that in supermarkets in Israel, they've decorated the supermarkets and the stores with red and green and lit Christmas trees because retailers see it as an opportunity for sales? What's it like now? Well, Abraham Joshua Heschel said that Christianity is not the enemy of Judaism. In fact, Judaism has to partner with Christianity to face the real enemies of the world. He called it a machloket l'shem shamayim shesofa lihikayim. That the dispute between Judaism and Christianity is a dispute for the sake of heaven, and it will survive all time. How could such a thing happen? How could Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was the brand plucked from the fire of the Holocaust, who saw his mother and his 3 sisters put to death. His whole family and the world that he came from was destroyed. How could he have found it in his heart to say that Christianity can be a partner with the Jewish people and with Judaism? He got it from Rabbi Yaakov Emden. Rabbi Yaakov Emden was a great European sage in the 18th century. He actually died the day that the United States became a country in 1776. And Yaakov Emden was facing 2 enemies in his day. Both of them were Jews. One was the Karaites, who were demanding that the rabbinical community does not have authority. And the second was the followers of Shabtai Tzvi. And so Yaakov Emden said, Christianity and Islam are the partners of the Jewish people in fighting those heretical sects. Imagine asking the Muslims and the Christians to unite with him in destroying what he considered to be the threats to Judaism and Jewish life. Abraham Joshua Heschel was appointed a professor of theology at the Union Theological Seminary, which was a couple of blocks away from JTS, the Jewish Theological Seminary where he taught. And in the speech he gave at Union Theological, the preeminent Protestant theological center of this whole country, and ultimately because of the war in Europe, of the world, he gave a speech called No Religion is an Island. And in speaking about Christianity and Judaism, he quoted Yaakov Emden. And he said, the machloket shel Hashem shamayim, what separates us is actually a dispute for the sake of heaven. It is sofalit kayem. It is actually accepted by God. What were his enemies? Heschel did not see the Karaites or the Sabbateans as enemies. He saw 3 other enemies. Think for a moment. Whom did Abraham Joshua Heschel, who in 1938 was arrested by the Gestapo, sent back to Poland, and saved by those who wanted to save scholars from Europe, they got him to England, and in 1940 he came to the United States. Who were his enemies? The first, obviously, were the Nazis. And here in the United States, what was going on? The Cold War. The second enemy was the Soviet Union. And his third enemy was within the United States of America. What unites those 3? The Nazis, the Soviets, and some aspect of this country. Were the Nazis religious? Let me see some head shaking. I hope people realize it's no. No, the Nazis saw themselves as above religion. They argued that in reality Hitler was God, and that their mission, despite the fact that it was contrary to everything that religion had taught, their mission was justified and supreme. The Soviets attempted to destroy all religion. To the Soviets, religion was an opiate of the masses. And so they were Heschel's second enemy. And their third element was in this country. And I'm not speaking of anti-Semitism, although he certainly was deeply concerned about that. What do you think Heschel criticized in this country? what characterized the United States in the 1950s and the 1960s was materialism, consumerism. He did not see it as a religious country. He saw this country as having a religious element in the church, but not in the culture of its people. So Heschel turned to the Christian community like Rav Yaakov Emden did in the 18th century. And he said to Christianity, to the mainline Protestant institutions, and to the Roman Catholics, we have more in common than divides us. We have to unite and work together to defeat the secularism that had permeated the world during the Nazi era with the Soviets and the materialism of the United States. I'm wondering if Mike Burnswag, who is hosting, and thank you so much, Mike, could you put up some photographs of Heschel? Could you present on your screen some pictures of Heschel that we might be able to see now? I don't know where Mike is.
I'm here. 1 second, Rabbi. Let me pull up the photos.
Please. By the way, this is the first time I've ever been with Rudy where he's wearing a tie and I am not. Ah, there's a picture of Abraham Joshua Heschel taken not too long before his death, when he was interviewed by Carl Sturm and died in 1972. Yes, can you go to another picture? Looks like, yeah. Oh, we didn't realize the pictures would come out so small. There is Heschel at the Vatican. This was somewhere between 1962 and 1965, where Pope John the 23rd declared Nostra Aetate, called In Our Time. It was Vatican II, and Heschel went to the Vatican to convince the Catholic Church to put an end to 2,000 years of a doctrine that the Jews deserved to be punished because they killed Jesus. They were guilty of the crime of deicide. And Heschel was successful, although it was a tremendous struggle, in convincing them to reverse that doctrine, to stop blaming the Jews for deicide, and instead to realize that the attempt to convert the Jews is defacing the mother religion from which Jesus himself came. He said, you may not present the Jews as the rejected or accursed of God because of what happened to Jesus. That had been the excuse for 2,000 years, to see the Jews persecuted, to prevent them from going back to the land, from being able to join in the guilds. Mike, can you show us another photograph of Heschel? There he is in a Protestant church, sitting on the bema. And he's speaking, calling upon the Protestant church to join in the struggle with the Jewish people and with the civil rights movement in fighting against, oh, there you go, excellent, thank you. To partner in the fight against on behalf of civil rights of African Americans in this country. Thank you. Can you go to another picture? Ah, there he is with Martin Luther King, and one of King's lieutenants is carrying the Sefer Torah that Avram Yoshua Heschel brought to this prayer service before the march to Selma. He and Martin Luther King considered themselves brothers. And Martin Luther King was not a Protestant mainline church, and he was a Roman Catholic, he was a Baptist. And Heschel said, let's partner together. And they didn't partner just for the civil rights movement. They partnered for their protest against the war in Vietnam. Mike, can you show us another picture? Yes, there's a peaceful march for ending the war in Vietnam. I was at the seminary when Heschel was most active in this effort. And he was always rushing through the halls to go on his way to another protest, to another march, to stop the horror of what he knew was going on in Vietnam. And as a matter of fact, in May of 1970, right after I had graduated, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee had a meeting that was called by Senator William Fulbright, who was the leading advocate against the policy of American policy in Vietnam. He brought soldiers who came out of the war and said that it's a horror. One of them was John Kerry, who later became Secretary of State. And at that Senate Foreign Relations Committee meeting, there was the head of the Protestant Church, a head of the Roman Catholic Church, and the third one was supposed to be Heschel. But Heschel had a heart attack that year. And so Rabbi Irving Greenberg was only 36 years old, took his place. Let's go back to end the sharing. Thank you very much, Mike. So what is it that we see from what Heschel had to say amongst those three enemies? The enemies of what secularism can do and bring about Nazism, the Soviet regime, and the culture of materialism in the United States. Heschel died in 1972. He was only 65 years old. And he came to this country in 1933. He came without being able to speak English. And he made English a sacred language. What message would he have for us today? Christmas Day 2021. What message would Heschel have, this man who came from the essence of Hasidic learning and teaching, the great-great-grandson of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of Opt, the Opta Rebbe? He was supposed to take over the dynasty. What did he do? He left his Hasidic world to study in Berlin, to study philosophy, and then combine the two. His worldly pursuits with his passion for God in this world, which meant to him a passion for justice, for a passion for compassion. God, he says, God is a divine presence wherever there is human suffering. Where is the human suffering today? Because that's where Heschel would speak up. That's where he would speak up. I ask you, what are the issues that are facing us that at this time, when we read of the birth of the liberation movement of the Jewish people from slavery in Egypt, when we read the story of Moshe Rabbeinu confronting the Pharaoh, what would you say Heschel would say about the world today? Where would he take issue? I ask you, unmute yourself, speak up. What are the commitments that we should be making on this day? To what issues? Let Heschel speak through us.
Rabbi, apropos to the question about what's going on in the world with China and the Uyghurs, look at the United States. We have states in the United States that are trying to stop Latino and African Americans from voting. I mean, there's all COVID, misinformation. I mean, there's more than enough.
You're right, Sue. You're right. I think that he would be appalled that that religious elements in the United States have actually been asking people not to vaccinate, allowing minority communities to suffer the most. I think it would have left him with horror. You're right. And also, he would want us to respond to the tremendous income disparity that has led to poverty and homelessness. Heschel could not imagine religion tolerating those things. Let me share with you something that Heschel said. I take it from this wonderful book, I Asked for Wonder. It was written by his student Sam Dresner, and Heschel says what religion is supposed to be. What is religion supposed to be? Listen to these words, and I don't know, Mike. Maybe you're able to put it up. It's that reading that from about religion, but I'll read it carefully. I hope people can follow. He says, it's customary to blame secular science and anti-religious philosophy for the eclipse of religion in modern society. Let's be honest. It would be more honest to blame religion for its own defeats. Religion declined not because it was refuted, but because it became irrelevant, dull, oppressive, insipid. When faith is replaced by creed, when worship is replaced by discipline, when love is replaced by habit, when the crises of today are ignored because of the splendor of the past, when faith becomes an heirloom rather than a living fountain, when religion speaks only in the name of authority rather than with the voice of compassion, its message is meaningless. The trouble with religion is that it's become religion. It's become institutionalized, dogma, doctrine, ritual. It is no longer an event. Religion achieves respectability not by the grace of society, not by what it publishes as a frontispiece. It receives respectability when it really is a call for faith, when it's a call for ethics, when it's a call from the Bible, when it's a call from God. I want to tell you, I don't think that Heschel would be pleased with what he sees in the Jewish community today also. At least that there's not enough. He would take issue with poverty, yes. He would also take issue with the treatment of refugees in this country. He would take issue with the way we treat Mother Earth. And I'm sad to say he would take issue with the treatment that we find in Israel about Palestinians. Heschel did not believe that land can become holy. He did not believe that a temple can be holy. Those are places in space. They're things. Heschel said God is not in space. God is in the moment in time. That's why the Shabbat is sacred. Not a building, not a land, not a shrine, not a tomb, not where Rachel was buried or Joseph was buried or Moses was buried. That's not Judaism. Judaism is where God is manifest, and the mistreatment of people who are suffering of any kind, whether it's Uyghurs in China or Hong Kong or Belarus or Russia or Syria, wherever it is, that's where we must respond like Moses responded in Parshat Shemot. So I'm going to stop here and see if anybody has any questions before we go on to conclude our services. Is there anything anybody wants to add about Heschel, or ask about Heschel, or ask about Christmas, or ask about Christmas in the shul? Anything? Oh, you're so filled with curiosity.
I think, Rabbi, I think he would ask us to use our free will properly, to
I
love
can't-
our neighbor,
I
to
can't
show
tell
decency
who's
and
speaking.
respect.
Who's speaking?
Ira is speaking.
Oh, Ira?
Yeah.
Yes, Ira, please tell me what you said. I can read the captions. I've got captions.
I
here.
wasn't listening, but I'll try. I think he would tell us to make proper use of our free will, to be holy, to love one another and respect one another and be decent. That's what I think he would tell us. And that we would start as individuals with our neighbors. And the
Thank you,
neighborhood
Ira.
is much greater than when he was growing up, as it is for each of us.
Thank you, Ira. You're correct. You're right. Heschel would have turned to today's Parsha, where it says that God says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. Heschel would have taken issue with that. He would have said that free will is the essence of the response that a human being has to evil in this world. You're right. If it's not for free will, then we can say it's not my fault. I don't need to get involved. Actually, that's the first thing that Pharaoh said to Moses and Aaron. Why are you getting involved? Go back to the reading that Michelle shared with us. He says, what is this to you? Why? He's the evil one of the Haggadah. Why are you getting involved? It's none of your business. Go back to Midian. Wasn't bad enough you left the palace? No. Heschel and Moses and God say to us, we have free will to change this world. Let's hope and pray that there is time to do what's necessary to do in this world. The world we're leaving to the younger generation is a scary world. I hope and I believe Heschel, by the way, was a man of faith and hope. And what he saw, and he still had hope, that's a challenge for us. We live in a very challenging world, the world that we're leaving to our grandchildren. But I have hope. I have 4 grandchildren and I see their friends. They can accomplish what we can't imagine. And I don't mean with cell phones and cars. I mean with saving the planet, with writing justice into this world, with making it the kind of a place that prophets like Isaiah, like Jeremiah, like Louis Finkelstein, and like Abraham Joshua Heschel believed in. I have hope in the face of reality. Yasher koach. Thank you. It's now 11 o'clock. Let's go back to Musaf, because what I missed probably more than anything was hearing our Chazan, Rudy Chassid, do Vial Kulam in Musaf. Rudy, take
You're putting
it.
me on the spot, Rabbi. You're putting me on the spot. We turn to page 155 for Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei rabba ועלמא דברי קירותי וימיך מלכותי בחייך וביומך ובחיי כל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבא מברך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה בריחו אלא מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. Our Musaf begins on page 156b. We will begin together 156b through 157 and then silently thereafter. 156b. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Harora Rei Lehion Gomer Chasarim Tovim v'Koneh Hakol v'Zocher et Chazdei Avot ומביא גואל לבני בניהם לבן שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ופוקר מושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקר שרה אתה גיבור לעולם עלי וחיים מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מחכה חיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ברופך עולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשמי עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומרה מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמנת על החיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים נריצך ונהקישך כסוד ציון צורפי קודש המקדישים שמחה בקודש ככתוב וירא וכל עוזר הזה והמן קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך הארץ כבודו כבודו מעלה למשרת שוערים זה לזה היה מקום כבודו ליומתם ברוך יאמרו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו במקומו יפן ברחמים ויחנם עם יחדים שמו ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד פעמיים באהבה שמע עומדים שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו הוא מלכנו הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית לעיני כל חי שנית לעיני כל חייני לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד הגוד לך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד הגוד לך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם לעולם ועד Ki emelech gadol gadol vekadosh 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 ata. Ki emelech gadol gadol vekadosh 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 ata. Baruch Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. Yitbarach v'yitaramam. Yitbarach v'yitaramam. Shimcha malkeinu tamid le'olam v'hem. V'chol ha'chaim yodu chasena. V'hallelu et shimcha be'emet. Ha'el Yeshuateinu ve'ezrateinu. Ezrateinu Selah ve'al kulam Yitzbarach v'yitaramam. Yitbarach v'yitaramam. Shimcha malkeinu tamid le'olam v'hem. Baruch atah Adonai Hatov Shimcha Hatov Shimcha Ulecha Ulecha Naeh V'hodod. Kaddish Shalem, page 181. Yitkara v'yikarasha meraba, v'yadamadi v'rakiruteh v'yamich malchuteh b'chaychona v'yamechona v'chayratol beit Yisrael v'agara v'zman kari v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevara, le'anam malon me'al maya. Yitbarach, Yibaraki Shabbat, Pahar v'Tarama v'Tnasei v'Hadar v'Tala v'Delal Shomer Gudusha, B'rihu le'ela mikol birchata v'shira datush b'chata v'nechama hamiran v'yalama v'yimeru. Amen. Titkalbel v'navadon dechot le'kodama v'hod chayru. Amen. Yehi shlamar v'yimeru. Amen. Ose shalom bimroma v'ya'ase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'yimeru. Amen. You may be seated for a moment as we turn to page 182 for Ein Keloheinu. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Adonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein כמושיענו, מחלוהנו, מחדוננו, מחמלכנו, מחמושיענו. נודד לאלוהינו, נודד לאדוננו, נודד למלכנו, נודד למושיענו. ברוך אלוהינו, ברוך אדוננו, ברוך מלכנו, ברוך מושיענו. אתה הוא אלוהינו, אתה הוא אדוננו, אתה הוא מלכנו, אתה הוא מושיענו. אתה הוא שהגדירו אבותינו, לפניך הקטורת השמים. We rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 183 for Aleinu. Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, התגדו לנו יוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומשה בקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו וזולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וענת היום והשבותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל והארץ ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. In love, we remember those who no longer walk the earth. We are grateful to God for the gift of their lives, for the joys we shared, and for the cherished memories that never fade. May God grant those who mourn the strength to see beyond their sorrow, sustaining them despite their grief. May the faith that binds us to our loved ones be a continuing source of comfort as we invite those who are mourning to please rise. Charlotte, you have the names of our yard sites?
Yes, I do. This week, we observe the yard sites of the following: Minnie Fox, mother of Regina Blum; Ida Stam, grandmother of Aaron Strauss; Donald Brower, family of Irene Brower; Etty Lam, Isidore Goldstein; Rachel Goldstein, mother of Marion Overstreet, Sandy Kozak; Helen Guston, Dora Lee Simons; Gussie Lewis, great aunt of Martin Jacobs; Rose Tauber, mother of Norman Tauber; Bella Eisen; Sophie Klang; Simon Feibush, father of Miriam Cohn and Morris Feibush; Sam Agate, grandfather of Gwen and Bruce Agate; Frank Katz; Harry Bressler, grandfather of Howard Bressler; Lawrence Goldberg, father of Jacob Goldberg, Dr. Joseph Goldberg, and Edith Zipkin; Benjamin Schlacher, uncle of David Camille; Sarah Frank, mother of Beatrice Glasser; Henry Zayce, father of Albert Zayce; Adam Berry, nephew of Esther Lachelle; Caroline Crow, Jacob Sokoloff, Pauline Taub, Samuel Brody; Hyman Agate, father of Gwen and Bruce Agate; Saul Miller, father-in-law of Ronnie Miller. And we keep in our hearts this year the memory of Herbert Raskus, brother of Nancy Agranen, Jean Sonnenblick, Lila Kluger, sister of Shirley Edelson and aunt of Ellen Edelson and Alan Morris. May their memories be a blessing always.
Thank you, Charlotte. And Rabbi, do you have any more you want to add?
Rudy, I would like to add Avraham Yoshua Heschel, teacher of all of us, on his 49th yahrzeit.
Okay. Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 184. Yit Kadal V'yit Kadash Shemei Rabba Be'alma Divra Kirutei Ve'amlich Malchutei B'chayechon U'pyomechon U'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala U'vizman Kari V'yimeru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarak Le'alam U'l'olmei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnasei V'yithadar V'yithale V'yithalal Shemei Dekudesha Brechu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Da'amiram Be'alama V'yimeru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu Be'al Kol Yisrael V'yimeru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yimeru Amen. Charlotte, do we have any announcements?
Yes, we do. Shabbat Shalom again, and thank you all for coming this morning and attending services. I'd like to thank Rabbi Levin for conducting this morning's service and for his drosh. And I'm happy to say you're feeling better and you were able to do this. To Cantor Rudy for your beautiful davening, as always. Your voice, you know, I say, is the voice of an angel,
Thank
and
you,
it
Charlotte.
truly is. And to Michelle for her beautiful Torah reading. That was just amazing. And for letting us come into your beautiful home this morning and share services. To Mike Burnswag, thank you for hosting the service this morning. Last night it was Cantor Rudy and I, and we prayed that nothing happened, because if it did, we didn't know how to fix it.
It'd be a very short service.
Yes, but it was smooth sailing last night. We had God looking over our shoulder, I
That's right.
think. So next Friday night, services will be on YouTube. Shabbat morning service is still not certain. So please, I ask you, check your email. That is the only way we can notify you. You will receive an email. It's on constant contact, and we'll let you know about next Shabbat morning, whether it will be online or in person. And Thursday is Torah study again, and Thursday afternoon is the museum trip, but the deadline has passed to make reservations to join the Ner Tamid group. So thank you to everyone. I hope you enjoyed this morning. Stay well, stay comfortable and warm in this terrible weather. And again, thank you for coming this morning, and have a good week.
Thank you, Charlotte. And thank you, Rabbi Levin. Always a pleasure. We conclude with Adon Olam on page 187. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yasir nivrak le'ed nasa v'chepso kol azay melech shemo nikra azay melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kiklot hakol levado yimlok nora ve'hu haya והוא הווה, והוא יהיה בתפארה, והוא יהיה בתפארה, והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשילו, להגבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית, ולא העוז והמשרה, ולא העוז והמשרה, והוא אלי וחי גואלי, וצור רכבי בצרה, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנת כוסי ביום מקרא, מנת כוסי ביום מקרא, בידו הפקיד רוחי, בעת אישן וההירה, ועם רוחי גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא הירא, אדוני לי ולא הירא. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Rabbi Levin, by all means.
Okay. All right. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם בראשית העולם פם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם בני ישראל ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ביום השביעי שבת וינפש שבת וינפש שבת וינפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לדורותם בראשית העולם.
Capabilities of formatting the screen.
Okay.
שברים רבותיי, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא ברית היובל.
Amen.
Despite what the Haftarah said, this wasn't wine. I now make Kiddush on pomegranate juice. But what does Barbara do being confined to the house? Every Friday,
Ooh.
woo, hand-baked
one.
colors. Oh, and this one, that's
Good.
an everything bagel challah. It's delicious. It's all of the things that you get on an everything bagel. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Shabbat shalom. What an incredible,
Thank you.
what an
Everyone
incredible
comes
way to
reading.
spend Christmas
Rudy,
morning.
It was an absolute pleasure. Oh, I love
Likewise.
it.
For us too.
Likewise.
Michelle, thank you so
Absolutely.
much, and the best wishes to all your kids and your grandchildren.
Likewise,
Thank
Rabbi.
you.
Mike, thank you
very
for
much.
doing what you did. Charlotte, thank you for asking me to fill in. And all of you who joined, what a wonderful Shabbos it is. Can I say Merry Christmas?
Of course.
Why not?
Why
And
not?
happy
It wouldn't
holidays.
matter. It wouldn't matter.
Have to respect other people's religions too.
Yeah, but it's not ours, so.
Absolutely. But if
Mike-
we respect other people's, then maybe other people will respect ours.
Mike, do you want to
It
stop
doesn't work that way.
recording?